Hello, Erica here, and today I'm going to do 25 bookish facts about me. I believe this was originally a tag, but I tried to find out who created it, and I couldn't really find it, and everyone's just kind of done it, and I haven't done it, and I don't talk about my personal life or even my reading life so much on this channel. I mostly just talk about the books, so I thought that this would be a fun thing to do and kind of mix it up a little bit. Without further ado, here we go. I have a degree in English literature, but while I was pursuing that degree, I rarely did any of my required reading. On that note, though, when I did do my required reading, I would abuse my books to the point that they would fall apart. I would dog-ear pages, I would crack the spines, I would write all over them, and they literally, like some of my books from college, are literally falling apart. My fiance and I are kind of house shopping right now a little bit, and I have made him promise me that when we buy a house, we will have built-in bookcases because I am so tired of being out of room for all of my books, and I'm sure I'll fill those up quite quickly as well. I've also made my father, who is a carpenter by hobby, promised to build me said bookcases, so that will be a thing that will happen sometime in my life. I fall asleep really, really easily while I read, and I cannot make myself read while sitting up, so I always read while laying down, and I always fall asleep. I am not a very big fan of Jane Austen. I think I've read 4 or 5 of her novels, and I just don't see what all the fuss is about. Sorry. I do actually have a favorite young adult author, even though I never read YA, and that is Sarah Dessen, who writes contemporary young adult, and I've loved her since I was like 16, and she actually lives in the same town as me, and sometimes I see her in real life. I do not lend out my books, nor do I accept books that friends offer to lend to me. That's just too stressful of a situation for me, and I'm too socially awkward to deal with it. I have like 6 reading spreadsheets in which I track the books I've read, my TBR books, my wishlist books, all of the books that I own, whether they be unread or read, because if Goodreads crashes one day, my life is going to end. When I was really little, like probably 2.5 to 3, I still didn't know how to read, of course, and I would make my dad read me the same books over and over again every night to the point that I memorized them, so it got to a point where he could start telling the story, or start reading to me, and he could stop, and I could just recite the rest of the book. Even though I read a lot of classics, I'm still really intimidated by them, especially the larger ones. And on that note, I am a huge fan of Charles Dickens now, but when I was 14 and we were assigned the unabridged version of Great Expectations in school, I absolutely loathed it with every cell of my being. My fiance is not a reader at all, except that he's read everything that Kurt Vonnegut has ever written, but he does not read, which is weird. I do not like reading in the bathtub. I do not know what that's all about. That is infuriating. I don't even like taking baths. I can't. But I do really like to eat while I read, and I think this is to stop me from falling asleep, but I do like to snack on things like chips and especially popcorn. I am a long-term lover of paperbacks, but have very recently, in the last month or so, been very drawn to shiny new hardbacks, so I've been purchasing more of those lately. If a book sits on my shelf for too long unread, it stresses me out to the point that I never ever want to read it and usually end up giving it away, which is why I need to stop having so many unread books. And I'm terrified of accepting books for review because I have a few times and they're books that I did want to read, but because I'm such a mood reader, I let them sit on my shelves for too long and then got way too stressed out about it and felt bad and felt guilty that I hadn't reviewed them yet. Nobody in my family, not my parents or any of my 3 siblings, are readers, really. So I'm not really sure how I got this way. In my dream world, I own a bookstore, and there are cats there, and it's amazing. I own approximately 550 physical books. If I don't read a really hyped up book right when everyone else is, or before it starts to get a lot of hype, I will probably never read it, because when I do, I'm typically disappointed and I don't like it as much as everyone else has. And even though hardly anyone in my real life reads at all, it has never stopped me from shouting enthusiastically about everything I'm reading and recommending books to literally everyone I know, even though I know they're never going to read them. And people in the restaurant I work at are reading books, like customers when they read books at the bar or at their table. I always creep on them to see what they're reading, but I'm far too timid to engage them in conversation about it, and also I don't want to interrupt their reading because that's rude. This year I made it a silent goal of mine, so I didn't advertise, that I was going to review every book I read either on Goodreads or on my channel, and I'm not doing so bad. I'm doing much better than last year. And lastly, most of the time when I have a day off of work, I spend it doing not much else other than reading, which is how I manage to finish like 3 books in a day sometimes. But at the end of the day, when I realize that I've done literally nothing but read, I usually feel kind of crappy about it because I have not dealt with my personal reality at all.